Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Riffhard podcast. My guest today is Cody from the band Wage War, who, before I really knew who he was this person who was rumored to have some of the best and sickest guitar tone in metal. And I knew about this because of Andrew Wade, who was a regular and a friend of mine on Nail the Mix. People just wanted to know about this Wage War guitar tone, Wage War guitar tone, Wage War guitar tone. It's all we ever heard. And Andrew told me that actually that tone, while obviously being somewhat gear related, was mostly due to the fact that Cody is just an insanely good guitar player, and that is what he sounds like. So as it turns out, Cody's not just an insanely good guitar player, but also a very talented producer and a songwriter for multiple bands. And Wage War is absolutely killing it right now. So very inspiring dude. Let's get into this. Welcome to the Riffhard podcast.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. And it's because Andrew Wade got me turned on to you a long time ago.
Yeah.
The Wage War guitar tone has been a thing, at least among the students of the URM community for close to since we started. And the Wage War tone, it's like all anybody ever talked about for the longest time. And so I know we had you guys on Nail the Mix once, and we've had Andrew on the URM podcast several times, and so this Wage War tone has come up lots of times. And the thing is that he has always maintained that yes, there is like the gear side of it, but that they're also what they think is like tone is actually they're hearing you playing, and that's a big part of it. Not the main part of it.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy how that I think Andrew told us at the time like he had got a bunch of like mixing work off of that just like after that record.
I believe it.
I think people would be a little disappointed to hear what the tone actually is. But yeah, I do think, just like with anything like, guitars, amps, like you can mimic anyone's setup and it's still going to sound different. I particularly pick very hard. So the way that I like dial guitar tone is like gain way back. And then I just pick really hard to get the breakup that I want out of it. I don't know if I'm at liberty to share what we use for that, but I guess
share it. He shared it.
Oh, that's right. On the podcast. Yeah. So I think for the first record at least, it sounds crazy, but it was Pod Farm. And it was what is the amp's got this like it's like a Mesa triple rec kind of emulation.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
I can
forget
see
what
the
called.
lettering. It's called like Stomper or something. Like it's on top of it, but it was that with obviously like an 808 overdrive, like all inside the plugin, I believe. And like he found this really weird way, I think it was with Ozone, to do some kind of EQ matching. And I don't remember what it was to or what it was for. But yeah, it was like this like kind of hodgepodge thing. And yeah, that was the tone for our first record. And we had like a really small amount of time to do the record. I think we only had like 2.5 weeks. We had gotten signed like we'd been a band for a long time, but once things like started in motion for us, they happened very quickly. So it's like, okay, well now we're we gotta put songs out, and then we gotta put the record out, and then we gotta get on tour. So I think like we had like 2.5 weeks to do the record or something. It was insane. And so a lot of it was what can we do the fastest, and like even when we were plugging it in, we were like, well, this sounds great. And we did like an amp shootout with like different like 5150s and stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, like that was just the most concise and clear for what we were doing at the time. And we were like tuning really low too. So it's like figuring out how to make all of that cut in the mix. And it just ended up being this Line 6 Pod Farm plugin. And that's, at least for the first record, that is the secret to the Blueprints guitar tone.
Isn't it
Um,
crazy how often guitar tone, like I find that lots of times the best guitar tones happen fast,
oh yeah,
and that it's not always crazy rigs. Like, I mean, there's a reason for why even in like the real amp world, like a 5150 with a tube screamer and a Mesa oversized with vintage 30s is like
you
the
can't beat
guitar
it.
tone. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
you
the
can't
guitar
beat
tone
it.
on like 85% of heavy albums ever. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's you literally just named off like when we were on our real amp segment of the career our career. That was my thing as the first amp I ever like spent money on. It's like, well, I love this style of music. What do I get? And you start looking at everyone's, rig rundowns and stuff like that. It's like, oh, cool. It's a 5150 block letter, either a Maxino D808 or a TS 808, noise gate, Mesa oversized. You're set. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are always trying to reinvent a wheel that's already kind of perfect or been perfected.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like how people use it is kind of the thing that changes because
Yep.
everyone was on the scooped train for a while and it's like, all right, cool, we gotta get these mids out of here. And I think now people are figuring out that's like, oh wait, the guitar frequency is mids. So now we're like crank the mids. You know what I mean? It's like a different and now with all the new octave stuff that's happening in music, you don't want to step on too much of like the low end frequency, but it's tried and true. I'm pretty sure it's other than that album, um, if not an actual amp, it's always been an emulation of a 5150.
I want to talk to you about the octave stuff.
Hmm.
I want to finish talking about 5150s and that guitar tone first, but I actually
Yeah,
did want to get to the octave stuff because that's like my favorite effect is octavers, and
same.
it is suddenly it's become a part of the modern sound. But the thing that Andrew always said about your playing, and I noticed this when like I heard the tracks, was it's super super clean, and I think that that's a big part of why the tone pops is,
Hmm.
yeah, so you pick super hard, but
Yeah.
then also you're not hearing anything getting in the way of like the purest possible note. And so what I'm curious about is, was that something conscious that you like practice like really really effective muting and being as clean as possible, or did it just kind of happen that way?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty conscious about like, there's obviously studio tricks and ways to get like the perfect take or whatever. But I feel like you lose a little bit um of like character when it comes into um how riffs come across and like the aggression, if it's an aggressive riff or even if it's like something that's really delicately played. For me, I started writing music when I was like 14 and I got Pro Tools like 7.4. I had no idea what I was doing, but that was the only way to get music out for like a local band. So I've been literally tracking to clicks since I was 14. So I'm very not to brag, but I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And even to this day, I mean, I do it every single day. So, and now that we played a click live and stuff, I feel like I'm just pretty locked in on that. Um, and like being a producer myself, like being able to see like how transients work, on the grid and stuff like that. I feel like you can kind of gauge like playing ahead, playing behind, like figuring out the right stuff. But yeah, I mean, clean and concise has always been super important to me on a record. You only get one shot for someone to hear it for the first time, and you want to make sure that it's gonna live forever. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
you want it to be as perfect as possible. But for me, while still human is a big part for me too.
Yeah, so if you're going to do it human style, then your left hand muting has to be totally on point for
Oh
this
yeah,
style of music.
it's very much it's the right and the left working together. And I also like down pick a lot.
Hmm.
I pretty much don't alternate pick unless I absolutely have to on like a fast chug part or something, but pretty much every wage war riff is like a down pick riff. At least when it's being tracked. Just so that you can really get all the aggression and yeah, and I feel like it's like clearer. And even going back to like my guitar influences and stuff, like huge Metallica fan, and obviously, James Hetfield, right hand of God.
Yeah, it's still to this day, it's still
dude, it's insane.
insane.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I came up on is like learning how to downpick like Master of Puppets um and stuff like that. So that's yeah, I feel I'm pretty confident in my right hand and left hand muting techniques for sure.
So with down picking, you said at least when tracking. So is that basically because some riffs are just like endurance wise would be or speed wise would be too much to do religiously all down pick live?
Yeah, like a good example of that would be we have a song called High Horse that like starts with this foam filter like it's like this really noodly thing. And if I were to like down pick that live, I mean I do the best that I can, but it's like incredibly taxing by the time the actual riff kicks in. But in the studio, I think there's videos online somewhere, but I'm literally down picking the entire thing just to make sure that it's like as clear and concise as possible. But you know, you got to get halfway through the take, punch it in halfway through the take, halfway through you know what I mean? And like make it all cohesive. But um, yeah, I mean, I down pick as much as I can. And it's funny how we just were on tour last month and I hadn't played in a while, like especially our set. And like the first day, the first tour, I thought my arm was gonna fall off. I was like,
Oh yeah.
we were playing 19 song sets
Oh
last
my
year,
God.
and we were just playing like a quick 45 minutes. It was in Australia, and
19 songs in 45 minutes.
no, I'm saying we were used to playing
Okay.
19 song sets,
Oh,
but
okay. I was like, wow.
which is like an hour and a half
Double
for us.
double
So we're
speed.
yeah. Uh, but we were playing 45-minute sets and we got through like song one and I was like, what is going on, dude? Like both of my forearms locking up and like my thumb can't hold the pick. So I think like as tours go by, like obviously I progressively get better and more locked in and more able to do different stuff. But
I've noticed that even if like you do a lot of practicing before a tour and
I
think you're
don't.
ready. No, no, I'm just saying that if I've noticed that like for me, like even if I practice a lot before a tour, there's a certain level of tension that happens at first on stage with the really hard stuff that like you can't prepare for. And I think it's because of what the adrenaline does to you, like because you can't really practice at home with adrenaline. So even if you
Right.
sit there with a metronome and like work on it and are really responsible about trying to be prepared, like you're not going to be able to simulate that adrenaline response that you get on stage. And so you're not going to actually, I mean, it'll be good for, I think, memorization and all that side of it. But the physical side, I think you can only really, really, really do that on stage.
Yeah, it's almost a crapshoot at times to just, you know, as long as you know the riffs, but you know, sometimes like there's different factors of every single day. You know what I mean? Like you don't know what the light show is going to be like. So like we're a band that doesn't love front wash. So being able to play the songs in the dark is kind of important. And then I mean, yeah, the sun, like if you're playing a festival, like there's just a lot of different factors, but yeah, half of it just comes down to feel and repetition. But now it's a little different because we're starting to phase in new songs to the set. We got a record coming out in a couple weeks. So we're starting to practice on all those, and that actually I need to sit down and figure out what I'm doing. Um, but I tell you what, the biggest learning curve for me recently, it's not even a learning curve, it's like a feeling thing, is we just switched to MIDI switching for the quad cortex. So I don't have a pedal board live. And that's like really weird feeling because for the entire first 10 years of this band, I've been stepping on effects as I go in between like singing or like leads or whatever it might be. And then now I don't have a pedal board anymore. So I feel lost sometimes.
It's not the most freeing thing ever.
Well, it is, but I no, it's very freeing, but sometimes I feel like I should be doing something when I don't
Hmm.
have anything to actually be doing, but I'm like, oh no, what if this doesn't, you know, do whatever? But yeah, that's been an adjustment
Has
for
it done
sure.
that? Has it done that ever? Like, have you had any nightmare scenarios where it didn't switch or switch to the wrong
Oh yeah.
patch? Yeah,
Actually the
that's
last show we just played Sonic Temple, great slot, 5 o'clock, like packed crowd. But like all of our gear was in the sun. Um and the computer that, obviously all of the changes are to click, and the computer that controls our guitars overheated. So we were on a different planet for a couple songs. Thankfully, it wasn't anything that had like a pitch alteration, like a half step up or down, but
Yeah.
parts were supposed to be clean. It was just like ripping distortion with reverb on it, but that's okay. I mean, it happens, and
I
lesson
mean,
learned.
yeah, or totally clean on a heavy
Yeah,
part.
yeah. Thankfully, we don't
Yeah.
use a lot of clean tones, so that didn't really happen. But we did have one part that was supposed to be clean that was just like, it was crazy.
I saw
Sorry,
that
Ohio.
happen. Dude, I saw that happen like a long time ago, actually. I'm like thinking back to the first show I ever went to was like Megadeth, like
Hmm.
a long time ago. And I remember they were playing that song Holy Wars, where there's a classical guitar solo right in the middle. And
Yep.
Marty Friedman came out to play it, and he was on full distortion. And like there was no MIDI switching. So I know that it was a guitar tech
Oh yeah,
backstage. So
forgot to hit the
someone,
acoustic
yeah,
simulator.
yeah, someone got yelled at after the show, but what he just like he started playing and then he just stopped and waited. I guess the drummer was hitting was like tapping the hat, so he just waited 4 counts and then it magically switched to clean. But
Wow.
you know, that's the I guess that's the benefit of not having MIDI switching
Yeah.
is you can adapt to that. If with MIDI switching, just kind of got to ride that horse.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. It's a rodeo. If you're, you might get bucked off.
And it's such a nightmare. The idea of stuff getting messed up like that, because then like if there's like backing tracks or anything like that, like for
Hmm.
me it's the nightmare of like, well, what if somehow like that gets off, or like
Yeah.
it that like the weird patch changes or something throw off the drummer, or like something like
We had like the click was legitimately slowing down in our ears as we were playing. And I was like, am I about to pass out and I'm just like getting dehydrated, or are we off? And so somehow in like the middle of our set, like the click was going like, you know, click, 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 click. And I was like, dude, am I having a stroke right now? And then somehow we like I mean, props to Steve, our drummer, he's absolute machine, but we somehow ended back on the right place. Uh, Dude, it was crazy. And then it happened like we played two more songs through because we were like, all right, well, that was weird. And like we didn't really think about what was happening. But yeah, it's a very scary feeling. I mean, just all most bands in general are, like production and video balls and lights and like you said, like any source of like a backing track or like guitar stuff like that, like is all tied to computers these days. Um, for like time coding and all that stuff. So that's why I've seen bands with multiple redundancy rigs. And we don't have one right now, which is a mistake we will never make again. But it's crazy how bad things can go if that goes down.
yeah, it's kind of terrifying. Okay, so speaking of technology, that is a good place to talk about the Octave thing.
Hmm.
So you were talking about how dialing the mids is even more important when working with octavers.
Hmm.
I think, man, octavers are like the best thing and the worst thing, because
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff you just cannot do on them. So do you find that you can only do certain types of riffs, or have you figured out a way to um, expand what you can do with an octaver?
Yeah. So my as low as I've gone personally, I think, or no, I lied on that. To me, it's only single string riffs.
Yep.
I feel like anytime you involve chords, it gets really like weird because it won't pick up the top string. It'll just pick up like the second string, which is normally the fifth. So it's not the note that you want out of the octave. So for me, I do that, and then depending on different parts, like a lot of riffs, especially on like our newer record, are like a 50-50 blend. So it's still, you still have the original signal, and then you have, the 50% of the octave in there, but not for the low end. I use it more as like a fuzz pedal. Like I like how it just kind of like dirties up the tone. And
Hmm.
then, if it's like a breakdown or a heavy part or something, we'll crank it to like 100 or like 96 or something so that it's got just a little bit of that high end because you don't want it to sound completely wolfy. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like a new way to be creative on guitar, and I know a lot of people are doing it now, so maybe that, trend or version of that is almost done. But yeah, I feel like everyone was stuck in this like drop D box for a while, you know what I mean? And which is great, or just drop tuning box. And then, you have your go-tos on all those things. It's like, well, I know that I usually play 578 or 356 or, however many
Oh, 1-4.
yeah, 014, yeah,
Oh, 1-4.
0134, yeah, 012, 13, 10, 12, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so for me, and we were playing in like drop A sharp, um, and then we were keeping the guitar in drop A sharp, dropping the top string down to G, which gives you like an entirely different like open tuning vibe because it's based off B minor. So you have like some different chords there, and then same thing, but then dropping the top string to F, which gives you like A minor, F, C, D minor, like all chords that you can play like you would on like a standard guitar. But so you have all these new cool open chords that you can use, which is just a new way to like think of something different other than just like, your regular drop D thing. So I think it was last record we started tuning up to like D standard and drop C, and then so tuning up but using the octaver to kind of like bring a little bit of that aggression back in.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the bands that I was like raised on and the bands that I loved all played in like drop C. Like that was the perfect tuning, you know what I mean? And I
Drop
think
C is like standard tuning in a way.
yeah.
It's like for like metal past the year 2000.
Mhm.
I think that drop C is like standard tuning, and then it's like drop tune from there. But like, I feel like drop C is almost. I don't know. Like, there's very few bands that actually play in standard or
Yeah.
drop D anymore. I feel like drop C. It feels so high.
Yeah, it
It's
really does.
yeah.
But I think that's where like good guitar tone exists. Like I think once you
Yep.
get below like drop B, you're not really working on guitar tone anymore. Like you're just like trying to make anything cut. But I feel like there's more energy when you tune higher, which is kind of why we've started going the other way. And then if we need that extra oomph, we'll throw the octave on. But yeah, and then D standard, which uh honestly, a lot of it's just because I want to take as few guitars on the road as possible and like keep it easy. So we get two tunings out of one guitar on that. But I love playing a D standard. I feel like more of a guitar player when we play in a standard tuning.
It's definitely a more grown up tuning.
Yeah, for
It's
sure. It like makes
yeah.
my Metallica, the Metallica and me come to life and be like, all right, cool. Like this would get some respect.
I mean, there. I feel like it's definitely like this modern tendency to go lower and lower and lower and lower. But I hear plenty of bands still like just do blistering stuff in like D or E even. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I've definitely heard bands still tuning standard where their stuff is super heavy.
Yeah, I mean, like Power Trip is a great example of that for me. Like the band is in E standard, and when like one of their riffs drops, you're like bunched up face, like super heavy. And they're in standard then, so that just goes to show that you don't really need. I don't think heaviness is a guitar tuning. I think it's a lot more
Agreed.
than that. Yeah, I think it's a it has to do with like obviously how the drums hit, how the guitar's played, like is it chug, is it open, is it single string? Like there's a lot of different things uh that relate to heaviness that don't just have to do with like we're in double drop E. You know what I mean?
I
Like
feel like low is almost like a cosmetic. It's like I call it cosmetic heaviness
yeah.
because it's definitely like it's fun and it sounds cool. Uh, but that doesn't mean that like it actually is like truly heavy, like in a way that will get you over and over and over and over again, like time after time after time. as opposed to just the very first time you hear it. Like if
Yeah,
it's superficial at times, I think real heaviness is context. It's all context.
100%. And like it's cool to do the super low stuff for like a impact moment or like a shock moment kind of thing. You
Yep,
know, I just don't feel like you can. I mean, we're guilty of that for sure. I'm not. We have double dropped things into ungodly territory, but um,
it's
yeah, I
fun.
think it's so fun and it's great for moments, not for like band's entire sounds, in my opinion. Or at least, or I'll say just for us. I don't even want to rule that out for other people because there's bands that tune so low that I think are amazing. So, um, yeah, for I mean, for us, I'm kind of on this wave of like bringing back like early '90s, like '80s inspiration into heavy music, which a lot of our record like as opposed to um, I mean, there's still obviously tons of breakdowns because that's a key part of our band, but some of the riff sections are like very like Pantera, Metallica driven as opposed to like the metalcore um staples. We kind of are trying
Hmm.
to do something different and do something different by taking our inspirations and like, well, what does that look like through Wage War's eyes in like 2024 basically.
The thing is, you say that, but I've always kind of heard a classic metal thing in your riffs.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's always been there. So you're just leaning into it more now.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like growing up, like As Lay Dying was my favorite band. Like the way that I learned how to play riffs and write riffs, was because of, Shadows Are Security. I got that record and I had never heard heavy music and like melodic, and like melody, like fused together like that. Like it's definitely a heavy record, but all the riffs are so singable. And I think
Hmm.
that like really got to me. And so like all of the early iterations of like our band that like aren't even on the internet, just like local bands, we were just like As a Lay Dying ripoff band, basically. Like just lots of melodic, and then harmonizing the second way through and stuff like that. So that's always been where like I grew up as a guitar player. And then obviously as I get older, like tastes change and the things that I enjoy out of heavy music have changed. So yeah, like I feel like my foundation is very like melodic and I feel like um I just feel like I'm saying I feel like a lot. That's gonna be a comment on this video too for sure.
I feel like
Um
it might be, but it's okay.
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I do yeah, I feel like where I said it again. Now I'm gonna start getting in my head. This is where we sync. Yeah, I mean I've always had a love for classic metal, so that's cool that you picked up on that.
Totally. So let's talk about that the cliches, because you brought one up. The play the riff once, then it comes back around harmonized,
Oh yeah.
which is great. The thing is though, it's like when I say cliche, I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it like in the way that like in jazz they have line cliches, which
Hmm.
are just a part something you just learn in jazz as like certain ways to do chord progressions.
Hmm.
And it's not seen as like, oh, that's so cliche. It's just because it's used commonly, almost like just part of the language. So in metal, at least since the year 2000, uh, playing a riff one time through and then coming back with the third harmony, is one of those cliches. Do you ever find that when you're writing, like you'll have you'll have the instinct to do that, and you'll have to ask yourself, am I doing this because it's like the cliche thing, like this is what I'm used to doing, or is it the right decision? Like, do you ever have to ask yourself that?
Sometimes I feel like songwriting and like riff writing is obviously very formulaic, because it's proven over time that there is a structure, there is a
Mm-hmm.
like there's a combination that works, especially in the heavy music space. It's like this is how it's done. And like doing a nice, you know harmony lead lick on the or a nice like strong like higher voiced lead lick on the on underneath the chorus, and then jumping it up to the octave for the second half of it, and like really having that like explosion moment. Yeah, I feel like like you can't miss with that, you know what I mean? And even as like I've started like writing, and becoming a songwriter, and even the way that I build out wage war songs, it's like there are things that I do every single time, because that's like how I build choruses, or that's how I build riffs, and whether it has to do with layering, or EQs or effects or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, there's some things that just they are what they are and they work. And I don't think I've pulled that specific move in a while, as far as the harmony lead line stuff. But um, or maybe I have. It's just kind of in different ways, like as opposed to doing the third, which is what I feel like most like melodic metalcore does. You go up a third from whatever the original riff is. Like I feel like the fifth or the fourth is like more like Metallica, Pantera sounding. So we've kind
Slayer.
of been,
Yeah.
yeah, Slayer, big time. So yeah, like using stuff more like that as opposed to like the melodic version of it, like going the darker, thrashier route on some of those parts.
Yeah, it's I like that you're comfortable with what your thing is.
Yeah.
So I think that when people are learning how to write, or they're critiquing writing, that's sometimes seen as a bad thing, where I think it's the most important thing is to figure out what your thing is when you're writing, especially professionally. So, or if you have a band and the band has become a brand, and not in a bad way, but just in a way where you have fans, you've had
Mhm.
fans, that's it. Like, they love what you do. And you know what the identity of this project is. It's really good to have a way to construct songs for that project where it has all the unique identifiers for that project. It's good for it to be a concrete thing.
Yeah, and I feel like as I've grown into like a songwriter, and I've like been taking on bands, within the scene or whatever, I feel like I definitely have like a form of signature sound. Like I feel like people can tell if I've worked on something, at least in a guitar sense. And I never want to copy and paste wageboard to any band, but obviously I have a style, and there are things that I do that are just kind of like my trademark moves. But I always try to like, okay, how would I do this through the eyes of this band? But you're obviously here for a reason, for as far as,
Hmm.
like rough riffs or production or what, or vocals, or whatever version of it I'm working on. But yeah, I mean, sometimes like in my style is made up of, however many, three or four different bands that I've loved over time, and like made what I am off of that. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like I have a style, and I know the like lock and key for Wage War at this point. Like I feel like I could write a you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? Very classic wage war song very quickly. And so the point of my career that we're at right now, like obviously we want to keep all of those things intact, and make sure that we're always staying true to that. But how do we push ourselves, and how do we keep, expanding like the heavy music space, and how do we stand out? How do we be different? Um, because there's so many great bands and great songs and great records that are already out, and I obviously want to pay homage to those things, but I also want to leave my mark on heavy music, by blazing a trail that feels like true to me or us as a band, but me as like guitar player or songwriter. Yeah.
So, how do you make sure that you're not just rewriting the same thing over and over? Like, I think that's it's important to I think always be pushing forward as
Yeah.
a writer, but if you're also mindful of keeping it true to a certain aesthetic, or a certain sound, how do you make sure that you're not just rehashing?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, I think,
So we're
as
here for.
yeah, that's what we're here
Yeah.
for. I mean, I think for me, I think I've got a pretty good finger on the pulse of what our band does and the things that people like out of our band. And so I always want to keep those elements intact in whatever we do. Um, I feel like at this point in music, um, it is it can be very difficult to find something like truly inspired, um, like an off the dome idea because it feels like everything has been done. And that's not even just in the heavy music space. I think it's in the pop space, the country space, the um, you know, whatever other space that, people enjoy. I feel like we're all just trying to, whether you realize it or not, I think we're all just trying to um, stay inspired and leave our mark, but it's hard to not especially I feel like that's why breakdowns are going away because how many chugga chugga patterns are left, you know what I mean? Like everything is just
It's
so close.
been perfected.
Yeah, it's just and there's like really great ones that is like, all right, cool. Well, this one's I mean, that's why all of the early breakdowns are so sick because they're so simple. And you don't have to be like, all right, well, we got to change this beat right here. We got to do this 16th here. We got to, you know what I mean? Because like this is written out and this is how it used to be. And, it's easy like that. So, um, excuse me, LaCroix carbonation's getting to me.
It'll
Um,
get you.
it'll get you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, like I said, it's the $1 million question. I really try, like I said, to just do whatever I can to stand out. And I think for me personally now it's, using, inspirations from like the past of like heavy music and trying to bring those in and use those as opposed to, like the late 2000s, early 2000s, metalcore. Sorry. I'm trying to look backwards a little bit. And then in terms of like production and stuff, like we're really starting to starting to lean into like industrial stuff, which again is like probably more of like a Ramstein thing. If I had to like choose a where did you get that from? Like kind of that new metal, like Static X.
But that's still
Um,
not still the Rammstein thing. That's 90s also.
yeah. So it's all older stuff. I think don't they always say like styles are cyclical or whatever, like every 30
Yes.
years, like it comes back around. So like the 80s were cool in the 2010s and now the 90s are cool or whatever that thing is. I feel like it might be the same way with music. You're even seeing it in like pop records, like Dua Lipa's last record, Future Nostalgia, was literally all just like 80s synthwave. Like the drums, the synths, all of it were just like, and it popped off. But it's like this isn't new. This is just a fresh take on, um, on a classic vibe. So I think yeah, continuing to do that, while also if you can find your space, that would be or find something that's true to you, that's unique. That's obviously the number one thing to do. And a lot of time I feel like uniqueness comes from um, just having multiple inspirations and like putting them all in the same pot and stirring them up. So I think that's where I'm at.
So with the industrial stuff, and I noticed there's a lot more synth
Mhm.
in as basically your records go on in time.
Oh yeah.
There's more and more and more synth and programming and yeah, industrial stuff. Is that something that you think about while writing, or is it added after the fact? Because I know a lot of heavy bands will have their songs and then that stuff gets added. Not,
Later.
I don't want to say not necessarily as an afterthought, but it just comes, though sometimes it is an afterthought. But I think that for a lot of bands, it just comes a lot later in the process.
Yeah.
Whereas in some cases, it's baked into the DNA of the song.
Yeah, as I've like started producing more of our stuff and be or co-producing, should I say, um, I like to start with that because again, I think that's something from another world that makes the music unique. Uh, it's not necessarily super unique now because I feel like every band is doing it, um, which is totally fine. I feel like it again moves the genre forward. I think you're starting to see these bands, have their spot in like mainstream music, which I think is awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I like dynamics. That's a big thing for me, and having to make this part feel this big, this part needs to feel this small. You know what I mean? And I think that is accomplished when you start bringing in 808s and pads and synths, or using them as like layering for big guitar riffs. Um, yeah, I think I love it. And I remember doing our first record and being like, I don't want any programming on this. Like, I just want it to be rocking, you know what I mean, the whole time, and like only stuff that the five of us can play together, more or less. You know what I mean? Obviously, you can't do everything the way that you emulated on a record, but and I think as we've gone on, it just adds a different dimension to your band. We've been fortunate enough to put out an acoustic record, and then also have, blast beats on another record. So I feel like our dynamic, at least of our sound, is very versatile and swings wide. And I think a lot of that came in when we started introducing some more programming. Our biggest song right now, Manic, has been since it came out, is like the whole first 45 seconds of the song is a synth and 808 drums. And then it's a pretty simple arrangement, and the guitar riff literally mimics the synth lead that I wrote for it. It's very simple. It's like four notes. It's very much against how I grew up playing guitar and wanting to make things like riffy, but I feel like, as a songwriter, my inspiration on guitar has changed, whereas like I used to want to be able to just like riff super hard, all the time and like show off. I feel like now I like to use the guitar as more of a tool as opposed to making it all about shredding. And I like things that are hooky and stuff that you can remember. So yeah, it all kind of starts with that song literally started with the synth, and then I put the guitar over it in the exact same synth thing. And yeah, I don't think that song would have existed if I just picked up a guitar and started playing that riff, because that's not really a riff that I would like write, I guess, like on my own.
Yeah, and also I think with synth, if you start with synth, you kind of have to be more strategic with how you write the guitar, because you already have something that's taken up all of the space. As opposed to if you start with guitar takes up all the space, and you got to fit the post-production and the synth to that. So you can go nuts with guitar. Like if you try to do that over a synth bed, it's going to be tough. Kind of like with using the Octaver, where you're limited, you've got constraints. Like you can't just start playing chords.
Yeah.
You have to keep it to what will actually work. I think if you're writing over a synth bed, it's this very, very similar thing. You're going to quickly find out how constrained you are with your options the moment you start trying to play wild stuff, and it just sounds like garbage.
Yeah, it's definitely a give and take, and sometimes you can overproduce things, and then you have to start pulling back and be like, all right, cool, I don't want to lose. It's all about the song too, and like what the song calls for. Is this like a guitar driven song, or is this like something that's like more of a hybrid? But yeah, I mean, you can definitely very quickly overdo it. Um, I have again, like my go-tos of like the ways that I use synth in Wage War songs, where it's more of an additive, and maybe at times you don't even realize you're hearing it, but it's more of a feeling. So yeah, I mean, I think synths in heavy music is super cool. I think that it's really expanding the genre, which I feel like is the best thing that we could ask for at the end of the day, because we all grew up loving this music, and to see it, what I feel like is having such an awesome moment right now. I feel like heavy music is more popular than it has ever been. It looks
All
different.
styles,
Do what?
all styles of it too.
Yeah,
Like,
all across the board, it's ripping, and I think part of that is because of how modern production is like making its way into metal and heavy music. And I know some people don't love that, which I don't like. I don't disagree if that's not your thing, but I think it is overall it's been a very positive thing for heavy music.
yeah, people will complain about it,
Mhm.
but when they complain about it, they're not paying attention to the history of heavy music. The
Yeah.
history of heavy music shows that anytime we happen to get bands into the mainstream, everybody uh, does well because of it. Like it helps the
Oh yeah.
underground. Yeah, if you think about the 2000s with bands like Avenged Sevenfold, going to the mainstream. Before that, Slipknot. If you go a little
Hmm.
further back, when the '90s band were having their moment in the mainstream, those have been moments where heavy music has been at a peak for that
Yep.
time period. So I think that's kind of what we're in now,
100%.
and hopefully it can be extended as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean it's here in a real big way, in my opinion, and it's so cool. Um, yeah, to just see bands rising up and getting, all these cool looks. And it's like I would like to think of it. I guess I'm just one guy in a band, but I would like to think of it more in a, let's help each other as opposed to a let's be top dog. You know what I mean? Like we're all, if one person wins, we all win. You know what I mean? So seeing bands that launch into the stratosphere, like it's only good for everything that everyone is doing and been working on for 10, 15 plus years. So yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome, man. I applaud these bands that I feel like are really just taking the genre to a new level and in unique ways as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, fans don't listen to just one band. That's
No.
the, that's the thing is they listen to as many bands as they want to. And so if you have a band like Sleep Token or whoever who's
Yeah.
just pushing it as far as success goes, and also being pretty weird too,
Yeah.
that is great for everybody.
Yeah, the sleep token thing is wild. But it's so cool to
Right?
see. I mean, Red Rocks, dude, like within 20 minutes. So crazy. But yeah, I
Insane.
mean, they're a great example of just like it feels like I mean, they've been at it for a really long time. But they just had this moment and it's been awesome to see how I mean, I'm not like a super big social media person, but just seeing how much love like people are like just running with it. You know what I mean? Like obviously there's like the identity part of it and all that stuff, but I think the music is awesome. I think you want to talk about a band that's really like mixing it up. I feel like they're doing it in such a cool, unique way. Um, so yeah, I mean that's again, it's all great for the genre, and I literally could not be more happy about it.
Yeah, likewise. And the thing is, it's not lost on me that in the same time period you'll have a tour like this recent Amon Amarth Cannibal Corpse tour, and
Mhm.
they also played Red Rocks. And
That's
that's
crazy.
yeah, exactly. That's crazy. They've been playing small arenas around the US. And that is I think some people might not remember, but there was a time period where that kind of music couldn't bring in 400 people.
Yeah.
So it's always when we have bands like Sleep Token that all styles of heavy music start to do a lot better. So I'm here for it. I don't care if I listen to a band or not. If we have a heavy band in the mainstream, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, let's just win together. You know what I mean? Like it's everybody wins. It's great.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that's a good place to end the episode. I want to wish you much success with the new album.
Thank you.
Much
We're
continued success.
thank you. We're excited about it, man. It's been yeah, it feels like it's been a long time coming. It's been about 2.5 years since we put out a record, so we really went for it on this one, and um I feel like every song is unique as we're kind of speaking on this, but we um we really tried to make 10 completely different songs and different facets of heavy music or melodic or all different ways. I think it's a ride from top to bottom, and there's something for everyone on there. So I'm very, very excited for the world to hear it in a couple weeks. So I appreciate that.
And what I've heard sounds fucking great.
Cool. Yeah, I'm
So,
I'm excited about it. The most recent song is probably the one that has the most Tombstone has the most of the riff stuff that I was talking about as far as kind of looking back at the Pantera, Slayer, at least of the ones out right now. There's some more on the record, but I'm definitely very excited about it.
awesome, man. Well, I hope it continues to crush
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
anytime.